Said hey to the staff here because it was our, I think it's our third time to this pizza ranch, actually. It's great to be back, and I want to open this up and have a fluid conversation. This is the way the Iowa caucus should be decided, actually. This is the way elections should be run, without the fake social media algorithms between us, without the TV screens between us. I think that they told me it was over 330. I think it's going to be about 390 events that we'll have done by the time of the Iowa caucus. And this is what gives me my sense of energy and purpose in this. We're in this to revive who we are as a country. And the reason I ran, I was a businessman, not a politician. My wife, Apoorva, she is a surgeon treating cancer survivors at the cancer hospital at Ohio State. She's a throat surgeon for them. We're raising our two sons. How old is yours? She's 8? Oh.
You're going to be a week.
You're as 8 as my son is 4. He's
Truth! We want truth!
He says the same. He's very precise. He turns 4 next year. I said that in the middle of his. You think she got you? I'm saying that I got a 4-year-old. He's telling me from the side, I'm not 4, making me look like a lying politician. Fact checking. But I promise you, we're not doing this out of convenience. One of them's about to be 4, the other one's 18 months. It's out of our sense of duty to this country. And when I sat down with Apoorva, it was after that red wave that never came. You remember that? And they blamed everything from Donald Trump to abortion, but there's something deeper going on. We as a Republican Party, we have grown lazy, actually. We've lost our way. Biden bad is not an agenda. Right? The left is very good at giving you a vision. They'll tell you what they stand for. Race, gender, sexuality, climate. And we're sitting here criticizing that vision without offering an alternative vision of our own. What do we actually stand for? Basic ideals of 1776, that's what it means. What does it mean to be a Republican in the year 2024? Should be the same as the question of what it means to be an American in the year 2024. Means we believe in the ideals of 1776, the ideals that this country was founded on. Basic ideals like merit and the pursuit of excellence. That you get ahead in this country, not on the color of your skin, but on the content of your character and your contributions. That's why I've said that we will end racial group quota systems and affirmative action in every area of American life. It's been a cancer on our national soul, and we are done with it. It means we believe in the rule of law. And I say this as the kid of legal immigrants to this country. That means your first act of entering this country cannot break the law. And that is why I've said we will use our own military to secure our own southern border and our northern border too. That's what it means to stand for the rule of law in the United States of America. It means that we, the people, create a government that is accountable to us, not the other way around. That the people who we elect to run the government, that they ought to be the ones who actually run the government. Not the shadow government in Washington, D.C. that runs the show today. So you know what? If I can't work for you for more than 8 years, which I think is a good thing, neither should any of those federal bureaucrats who are reporting into me either. 8-year term limits for the bureaucracy instead of civil service protections. That is how you drain the swamp. Fire 75% of those federal bureaucrats. I'll get that done by the end of my first term. Start that on day 1 as well. Shut down government agencies that should not exist. From the U.S. Department of Education to the CBDC, to the ATF, to the FBI. We're not just going to massage them around the edges anymore. We're going to get in there and shut them down. That's how you revive this constitutional republic. Don't start with last year's budget as the baseline, which is based on the prior year's budget, which is based on the prior year's budget before that. Start with 0 as the baseline and ask what's actually necessary. It's called zero-based budgeting. It's how I run my businesses. It's how many CEOs across this country run their businesses. It's how I'm going to run the federal government of the United States. This is how you fight the national debt crisis that we're in. This isn't controversial. This is common sense. What does it mean to be American? It means that we don't depend on our enemy for our modern way of life. That's why, as your next president, I will declare economic independence from communist China. We will not depend on China for the pharmaceuticals that we put in our mouth. We won't depend on China for our military industrial base. We're not going to depend on China for our electronics or semiconductors in this country. We make that in the United States of America. That's the Declaration of Independence that Thomas Jefferson would have signed. That's the Declaration of Independence that I will sign as your next president. These aren't black ideas or white ideas. These aren't even really Democrat ideas or Republican ideas. These are American ideals that we fought a revolution to secure. And I believe deep in my heart that these ideals still exist. I'm running for president to revive them. E pluribus unum is our creed. That means from many, one. That's what we've lost in this country. We've been taught to celebrate our diversity and our differences so much that we forgot all of the ways that we are really the same as Americans, bound by that common set of ideals. And here's how we're going to get them back. It's going to be by all of us, not just me. All of us. Starting to speak the truth in the open again. Say in public what you will say in private at the dinner table. Say it with a spine. Say it with conviction. Say it with respect. But part of respect is that you respect your neighbor enough to tell them what you actually think. And you see, that's what this campaign is really about. Speaking the truth, not just when it's easy, but when it's hard. Speaking the truth, not just to the other side, but to our own side, our own party, when necessary. There's a reason why I'm the only person in this race who can even tell you certain things. That I will strip vaccine manufacturers of their special liability exemptions, because where there has been injury, there must be justice. To tell you that I'm against the CO2 pipeline, working its way across half the state, using eminent domain to seize the land of innocent farmers. It's wrong and it's unconstitutional. To tell you that it's based on a climate change agenda that actually is a hoax because it has nothing to do with the climate. To tell you that Ronna McDaniel, our failed chairwoman, as the RNC chairwoman, needs to resign as the failed leader of our party after 5 failed years of leadership. To tell you that I will pardon every peaceful protester from January 6th on my first day in office, because it's the right thing to do for our country. Ask yourself why I am the only candidate who's able to tell you these things. It's because anymore, every politician dances to the tune of their biggest donor. It's a fact. It's what our politics has become. Well, in my case, that biggest donor is me. I don't report to them. I report to you, the citizens of this country, not another one, the citizens of this country, the United States of America. I would rather speak the truth and lose this election than to win by playing some fake game of political snakes and ladders. But my bet is that that's going to be the winning strategy. I think we're going to win the Iowa caucus on January 15th. That's not up to me, though. That's up to you. So I'm asking for your help. Every one of your voices and votes counts as the equivalent of 1 million people in the impact that it has in shaping the next president. So I'm asking you to do your part for this country. And the Iowa caucus isn't just about electing the president. It's about setting the platform for this party too, which I told you, that's what we're missing. It's not just about me and the president. It's about the future of our party and the future of our country. So if you all do your part, that's what I'm asking you for. I promise you, my family and I, we will do ours to make sure, not in some fake politician kind of way, but in a true way, make sure that our country's best days are actually still ahead of us. Thank you for coming today, guys. God bless you and your families, and God bless our country. And I want to open this up to you to be able to ask me the hard questions. Easy ones I've probably answered before. Give me the hard ones. You have a decision to make, and we'll start with you, and then we'll move to the back.
Yes, Ken Anderson. You said you're willing to maybe think you're gonna win the Iowa caucus. I mean, even if you go second, that's still winning.
Yeah.
But even with that, are you willing to stay in the race? You know, 'cause sometimes people that kind of finish a little bit later, they always succeed, always drop out. Are you willing to stay into to like California and some of these other states?
I'm staying all the way through November 2024
All right.
of this year, and I'm staying all the way through January 2033, when we
Okay.
leave that White House after 2 terms and we revive this country. We're not making this sacrifice lightly, and I'm not one to do something half-heartedly. You have my word on that.
All right. And also, Tom was in here earlier, kind of mentioned about the polls. Like I said, I've been told like every weekend or whatever they always call me. But what he kind of led me to believe is people that are not polling, people that have never been voting before. So I think if you kind of emphasize on that, I think that might be your winning strategy to.
Oh, it is. Believe me, maybe you should be our strategist here, because you're thinking exactly how we are. See, we're bringing, if I might ask you guys, how old are you guys? You're 23. A lot of the people we're bringing in are from the next generation who haven't been polled, haven't been to a caucus before, but who care about the future of this country, because they're the ones going to be around when that national debt comes ripe and due. And so we're going to deliver a shock on January 15th, but it's not just about January 15th. That's also why we're going to win the general election in a landslide. And this has to be a landslide in the general this year. This cannot be another 50.1 election. We're skating on thin ice as a country. This has to be a moral mandate like what Ronald Reagan delivered in 1980. And a landslide minus some shenanigans, let's be honest about that, is still going to be a decisive victory. And I think I'm the only candidate in this race that's able to bring those libertarians, that next generation, the non-traditional America First patriots, along with our traditional Republicans, along to win this election in a moral mandate. And when I do, by the way, speaking of the elections, my top legislative priority is to fix once and for all the electoral system in this country. Single day voting on election day as a national holiday that'll be unifying for this country, with paper ballots, government issued ID, and yes, English as the sole language that appears on a ballot. We'll get that done, but in the meantime, I have to win in a landslide, and that's my job. So if you make me your nominee, I deliver you a landslide election. That's how we get this country back. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Hello, thanks for coming to Independence. I work in agriculture with farmers specifically, and I didn't know if you had a stance on the current crop insurance situation and for or against it, or know what's going on with that. And also, you being a vegan and all, I didn't know if that had any impact on your thoughts on animal agriculture.
Yeah, it's all fair question. I'm not a vegan, actually. I'm vegetarian, but whatever. Yeah,
That's good.
yeah. I like my cheese. May have a bias in favor of the question you're asking, but I'll answer the second one first. And I'll tell you a word about my faith as well, to use this as a chance, because that's where I was raised, in a household that part of our religious beliefs is, my parents don't drink alcohol, we grow up in a household that doesn't eat meat, etc. I'm Hindu. Slightly different faith background from people who have run for US president. I can tell you, because I went to Christian schools. I went to St. Xavier in Cincinnati. I can tell you this with confidence. We share the same value set in common. The value set that this country was founded on. The heart of my faith is that God put us for a purpose. It's our duty to realize that purpose. That God works through us in different ways, but we are still equal because we're equal in the eyes of God. That's the heart of my faith. And yes, I did have a very traditional upbringing in some senses. My parents taught us that family is the foundation. Marriage is sacred. They taught us this between a man and a woman, that divorce isn't some option you just pick off a menu when things go a little wrong, that the good things in life involve a sacrifice. It's not just about this life, it's about the eternal life. Now, we read the 10 Commandments for the first time when I was in 9th grade at St. X, and it didn't feel like I was reading it for the first time. What do they say? There's one true God. Don't take his name in vain. Observe the Sabbath. honor your parents. Don't lie, don't cheat, don't steal, don't commit adultery, don't covet. These are the Judeo-Christian values that our nation was founded on. They seem foreign today, actually. I don't think they're foreign to most of us, and they're not foreign to me. They're the same value set that I was raised in. And so part of my job as the next president, I think, is to stand for those shared national values, to swear an oath to the Constitution, and to keep it. That includes the First Amendment liberties that we have in this country. Freedom of speech and freedom of religion, freedom to worship. So every person is free to worship as they will, but not to foist that on everybody else. And so do I stand for the freedoms, including farmers of every kind, including those who bring up cattle or those who bring up hogs or otherwise, to live their version of the American dream without the government standing in their way? You're darn right I will. That's what swearing an oath to the Constitution actually means. I'm not here running for pastor. I'm running for president. The president swears an oath to the Constitution, which gives the freedom to pastors to be able to each do their own job and farmers to each do their own job. And if anything, I'm the one president who is going to shut down that deep state where a lot of those toxic regulations actually come from, impeding farmers across this country. The WOTUS, we could go straight down the list. The EPA, you could go, the electric vehicle subsidies, the subsidies for windmills, the crony capitalism that results in violating the private property rights of farmers with that carbon dioxide pipeline, making its way across half of the state. And so, yes, I think I'm going to be the most farmer-friendly president in this country. And I do think that, from the insurance perspective, at least through the private marketplace, it's not really being provided in an affordable way. Because I think that one of the things I'm going to end, and I know there's a governmental component to it, but one of the things I will end is the special antitrust exemptions for insurance companies. That's the product of lobbying, and that's part of what makes insurance of many kinds, including health insurance, unaffordable in this country. And so I'm going to put an end to all insurance-based antitrust exemptions. It's a really technical issue, but that's where I land. So hopefully that addresses your questions. Anything else I could speak to for you?
Be good start, or good for now.
What's that? Thank you. Appreciate that. Right there in the back.
Vivek, we've talked a couple times, and I really appreciate you. And I keep coming back because one of the things that really attracted me is the fact that you do speak truth. And you speak it unabashedly, and you don't back down. And that is very rare in what we've seen. We've spoken about a different issue a couple times, but I wanted to bring something else up that is very much a concern to me and my family. When we see what's going on with businesses being attacked, and when you defend your small business, it's the defender that is being persecuted. I don't think that's unintentional. When we're seeing what's going on in the bigger markets, and what went on with even the medical fields, and you see all through. As you see here in Iowa, a lot of times when we want to control count, we send animals into a chute. And what I'm seeing is that when more things are being pushed online for safety reasons, more stores are being closed down. When you look at the LLCs, how they're targeting the small ones but not the big ones, I see that a lot of businesses are being funneled into a chute. When we look at energy, they're trying to funnel us into a chute on electricity. All these things are a way to control and flip a switch and turn things off. If we have to get our food from online, if we have to go to a store that's online, they can flip that switch and control us. And it really bothers me with what's going on with that.
Well, can I give you one big area where this risk is presenting itself today, sir, is thank you for raising that, is with the central bank digital currency, actually. Is that what you said, sir? You saw that as well. I mean, this is where this road ends. Just by show of hands, anybody familiar with this issue, the CBDC issue? Okay. So they basically are trying to convert the dollar into a digital dollar. Now, why are they doing that? The nominal reason they say why is because China's doing it and we need to keep up technologically with China. Well, dig into why China's doing it. The same reason they want to do it here. They want to be able to wipe your bank account clean if you say something or do something that the government doesn't approve of. That is wrong. That's what they're trying to do in China. They're bringing that to the United States. Remember the Canadian truckers, the Freedom Envoy, that protested the COVID vaccine mandates and the lockdowns? That's what they used in Canada, shut off their access to the financial system and their banks. Now you don't hear about the Canadian truckers anymore. Well, that's why I'm dead set against the rise of a CBDC, a central bank digital currency in the United States. I'll put an end to it as the next president. And this is part of putting the Federal Reserve back in its place. The Federal Reserve is an institution that's lost its way. part of our difficulty in this country comes from a financial institution that's tried to play God from on high for years, raining money from on high like manna from heaven. We're skiing on artificial snow and then jerk it in the other direction. Instead, what we need from the Fed is one thing. Stabilize the dollar as a unit of measurement, period. I will peg it to gold, silver, agricultural, and farm commodities, period. And I think that's going to be good for farmers, too. Stabilize the dollar as a unit of measurement. I don't need 23,000 employees at the U.S. Fed to do that. We're going to fire 90% of them. And this is the problem with the administrative state. You have a bunch of people showing up to work who should have never had that job in the first place. They start finding things to do, actually. Well, that's where the CBDC comes from. So anyway, what we see with the ESG movement, the CBDC movement, and I'm worried, sir, some of this comes not just through the Democratic Party, but through the Republican Party. There's a candidate running for U.S. president right now on the Iowa caucus, Nikki Haley, that wants to tie your social media account and every internet transaction, every internet profile you create to government-issued ID. That's Orwellian. I don't care if that comes from Joe Biden or Jack Smith or Dick Cheney or Nikki Haley, Republican or Democrat, it doesn't matter. That's a threat to our liberty. And I thank you for being able to see where the puck is going and being able to ask a question that's actually going to affect the future country that you're going to grow up in. And my commitment to you as your president, you know, Thomas Paine, actually, this is based on a memo called Common Sense, written by Thomas Paine in the lead up to the American Revolution. Well, these people who wrote in the lead up to the American Revolution, including Thomas Jefferson and Thomas Paine, they all wrote under pseudonym. It wasn't all digitized in some sort of government trackable, centralized manner. We have to put an end to that, and I think that's how we protect our liberties in an era of technocracy. And it's going to take a president who stands for the Constitution to preserve that. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Right there.
Hi, kind of a two-parter here for you. So, just kind of curious on your thoughts. There's an epidemic of just single dads and just how the courts treat fathers, and then second part of that is how do we re-engage these younger men, like build a fire in them, you know, really push them to rebuild the nuclear families when we have courts that take everything but your left shoe.
So there's two, it's a great question. What's your name?
Cody.
Cody, it's a good question. There's two dimensions to that. One I'll just address because it hasn't come up very much, but I think it's important, is paternal equality in the court system. I actually think that there has been a hostile culture. I'm going to just give you a mind bender for a second, but if you look at the stats, you'll see what I mean. If the court system treated, let's just say it was skin color, and had one set of outcomes that was as disparate to the other, you'd have the entire country crying systemic racism through the court system. Let's say somebody gets one set of punishments for the same set of crime, but based on being one skin color versus another. And there have been points in our history where we've been less than perfect in the late 1800s and early 1900s in this country. Today, that disparity is far greater for the way, especially when it comes to custody or other disputes, when it comes to men versus women. And yet somehow we look the other way at that form of inequality. And I'm against that. I say that as a father of two sons who's married and God willing will stay married to my wife for the rest of my life. And that's what I believe is the foundation of a good family and a good country. We've been blessed with the marriage that we have. To say that it's wrong when for those who it doesn't work out that way, that the man is on one end of the losing bar of that. We have an assault in this country on the psychology of young boys and young men. Telling you to shut up, sit down, do as you're told, your toxic masculinity, hide who you are. Now put an end to that. This is a country where every one of us is different. God gives each of us our own unique gifts. Men and women aren't the same. God gives each of us, and every man's not the same as every other man. Every woman's not the same as every other woman. But every one of us is endowed with our own unique God-given gifts. And we don't need to hide from who we are. We're different. But we're bound still by a common set of ideals that says we're equal in the eyes of the law. And so that's a question I haven't gotten much on the campaign trail, but I thank you for bringing it up. It's one you're not supposed to bring up, and I think we should talk openly about it. And I'm going to be open about where I stand on it, even if that's not the politically correct thing to say. Now, as it relates to fatherlessness, there's something deeper going on. Our government is paying, for God's sake, single mothers more money not to have a man in the house than to have a man in the house. That's the truth today. It's based on Lyndon Johnson's Great Society, the biggest misnomer of policy in American history. And it was designed in the name of helping black Americans, actually. Well, this isn't compassion, it ends up being cruelty. Black family formation was much better in the 1950s and 60s than it is today, where 45% of black kids are born into single-parent households. And it's not restricted to black kids. 25% of all kids are born into fatherless households, which means you're 8 times more likely not to graduate from high school, 10 times more likely to end up in prison, 10 times more likely not to graduate from high school. So people ask me, did you grow up in privilege? We live a life that my parents would have never imagined when they came to this country. That I would have never imagined when my dad had to go to night school to keep job security while Jack Welch brought layoffs to GE in Ohio. But people ask me now, did you grow up in privilege? I used to say no to that. No, we didn't grow up in money. We didn't. But I actually had the ultimate privilege of having 2 parents in the house with a focus on education and instilling in us a belief in God and a work ethic, and actually a focus on achievement in the United States. And so I want every kid in this country to have at least a chance to enjoy that same opportunity. And I'll tell you one thing how I run this country. We will stop using our taxpayer money to pay people to do the exact opposite of what's best for them. Those single mothers who I visited on the south side of Chicago, who get paid more not to have a married man in the house than to have a married man in the house. People I've visited this campaign in Kensington, the inner city of Philadelphia, who are drug addicts that get paid more, or get effectively aid programs that just give them crack pipes and needles in the name of getting them off of drug addiction. Paying young men more money not to go to work than to actually go to work. You think sitting in your parents' basement playing video games, smoking pot, it's giving you self-confidence? No, that's what's driving the mental health epidemic. That's not compassion. That's cruelty. More money for people not to repay their student loans than to repay their student loans. We will put an end to that on my watch. That's how, in part, you fight the national debt crisis. It's not only how you revive this economy, it's how you revive that sense of self-confidence that we've lost. How old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
30.
You're 30.
Yes, sir.
I'm 38. I'm the youngest person ever to run for U.S. president as a Republican. But I think it's true of all of us, not just our generation, not just yours. I think it's true of all of us right now. We are hungry for a cause, all of us. We are starved for purpose and meaning and identity. At a time in our history when the things that used to fill that void, faith in God, patriotism, hard work, family, these things have disappeared, and that leaves a moral vacuum in its wake. And it's when you have that black hole that runs that deep, that's when the poison fills the void. And sometimes we conservatives, we obsess over the individual poisons too much. Wokeism, transgenderism, climatism, COVIDism, depression, anxiety, fentanyl, suicide. These are symptoms of that deeper void of purpose and meaning. And I think half the job of the next U.S. president is policy, but the other half of the job, even in terms of reviving that norm of the family, that 2-parent household, is the example that we set, the national character that we revive. And I want you, I don't know if you have kids, sir.
Yes.
You do. Well, I want you to be able to look your kids in the eye, just as I want to look my kids in the eye and tell them, whoever that is in the White House, that I want you to grow up and be like him. For a poor one, I would say like them, like both of us. That too is how we're going to lead this country, not just through the policies that we set, but through the example we set too, and reviving our national character. And I want you to hold us to that standard if you put us there. And my word back to you is we will do our best to live up to it. So thank you. I appreciate that. And take a couple questions again before we find it. Right there in the back, sir. Yeah, back to you.
So going back to government subsidies, and part of it is subsidized crop insurance, but over the last several years, we've seen a lot of farmers obtain, not just farmers, businesses obtain a lot of government subsidies. Farmers in general are Republican, but they're always out there to put their hand out. They don't want to be left behind if somebody's going to pay it.
That's a fair way to frame it, actually, right? If you're going to play the game, then you might as well not be losing it.
Yep. So a lot of them are gonna take what's gonna come to them, and there's been a lot of dollars coming to them. They don't even know those programs exist until the FSA office brings them up, and all of a sudden they're getting large sizable checks. At a time where a lot of them are making a lot of money the last 2, 3, 4 years. How will you determine what subsidies make sense? And this can go for more than just agriculture and crop insurance and whatever else, but, you know, can go general government.
Yeah.
But how do you determine where we're gonna spend our money?
So I want to start with the more basic set of the rules of the road. I'll give you one example that is relevant to Iowa farmers here. The Renewable Fuel Standard, RFS. You're familiar with this? Right. So that refers to anybody, most people here familiar with that, or basically says here's the minimum blend required in gasoline to fill up your cars that comes from ethanol made from Iowa corn. Now, I start from first principles. So some people, and I'm just not a politician, I'm just not, so I'm not going to try to pretend to do it. But many politicians, when they come through every 4 years for about 6 weeks, everyone loves the ethanol subsidies and the renewable fuel standard because they love Iowa farmers, and then you don't hear about that until 4 years later. My basis for being in favor of the renewable fuel standard is on the basis of market principles. The right answer should be no subsidies or no renewable fuel standard for anybody with consumer choice at the pump. But we don't have consumer choice at the pump because of a different industry's lobbying, is your point you're making. The oil industry lobbying, which stopped us from having consumer choice at the pump. But the few places we do have consumer choice at the pump, like Wichita, Kansas, you can see this. People, when they get their choice, choose a higher blend of ethanol on their own than the renewable fuel standard because it's cheaper. And for some people, it matters that it's made in America. And it's a fair basis for making a consumer decision. So the renewable fuel standard, the reason I support it is it's the second best alternative to true consumer choice at the pump, which we don't have. So this is as much a question for telling you how I think as a president, rather than any one individual subsidy. What I prefer is a basic, actual free market that's not the product of crony capitalism and corruption. And that's what we're driving to. But in the meantime, we're going to allow everybody to compete on the same playing field. I am opposed to electric vehicle subsidies. I'm going to end them. I have no problem with you buying an electric vehicle, but I have a problem with being asked to pay for it, which is what I'm doing today. We're going to end all of the special exemptions. And I told you the liability exemptions for vaccine manufacturers. Why on earth does, normally if you sell a product and it hurts you, you can sue that company. But if it's a vaccine, somehow you can't. It's the product of lobbying. Why are healthcare costs what they are? One category of companies, insurance companies, including health insurance companies, which we talked about, are exempt from antitrust exemptions. Well, that should be the case. Same rules should apply across the board. So eventually we want to end the crony capitalism, and here's how you do it. It's basic anti-corruption measures in government. You should not be able to lobby the government for at least 10 years until after you've left that government. That's basic. You shouldn't be able to join the board of a company for at least 10 years after you've actually been a regulator of that company or a lawmaker who makes laws affecting that company. I don't think you should be allowed to trade individual stocks while you're in Congress. I don't think you should be allowed to trade individual stocks if you're a regulator. Bans individual stock trading for people who are working in the federal government. So these are basic changes, but if somebody's coming in as an existing politician, here's how the game is played. They're all already bought and paid for by the time they get to the finish line. And so it's going to take somebody outside of that broken system. Somebody who's not bought and paid for, somebody who does not report to that mega donor class, to get this right. And in the meantime, we'll use fair principles in the meantime to make sure that it's just the people who are at the front of the line weren't the ones who actually got their special favors doled out, which is the heart of your question.
Well, I mean,
so thank you, sir.
The U.S. has had for a lot of years a cheap food policy. I think that's what USDA got going, 30s or 40s, or Great Depression, whatever it was. So a lot of the subsidies have been based on a basic principle that does make sense, right? Keep the natives from being restless. You saw what happened over in the Middle East back in 12, 13, 14 when price of wheat went crazy. You had a lot of turmoil, and that's what you're going to have if you do get high food prices. And so I understand the cheap food price.
I understand, but the way we need to do it is through actual greater competition. I mean, even when you take about the subsidized, think about the loophole, the subsidized crop insurance, but we don't have a competitive marketplace for people who sell insurance, which drives up the cost, and then you subsidize it. It's one big loop of crony capitalism unto itself, as opposed to the market actually working normally. Anybody of you paid attention to what Javier Milei is doing in Argentina? Does that name mean anything to you? He's reforming that country. For those of you familiar, I'm gonna make Javier Milei look like a moderate by the time I'm 3 months into my presidency, okay? Slash and burn the federal bureaucracy, send 75% of the bureaucrats packing back home, shut down agencies that shouldn't exist, rescind regulations that were never passed by Congress. I mean, the joke is Congress is not even passing most of the laws. The reality is they're being enacted by the bureaucrats who are not subject to actual democratic accountability. One of the ways we clean up corruption as well is through term limits. I favor term limits in the bureaucracy. I've said that. 8-year term limits in the bureaucracy. But I also favor term limits in Congress. Now, the dilemma with how you get term limits in Congress is that requires 75% of the people who you're trying to term limit out to vote for those same term limits. So, got a bit of a chicken and egg problem there. I'm a businessman. I believe in working through the incentives that people already have. And so I don't love that it works this way, but it does, and here's how we're going to do it. I'll grandfather in anybody who's already there to say it doesn't apply to you, but whoever comes to fill that seat after you, it does apply to them. Same thing with the insider trading bans and for congressmen as well. Because these are wildly popular policies and they're going to vote in favor of them. So it's silly our politics is as broken as it is, but this is what it's going to take to actually drive real change in our system. And I think this is going to take a leader from the outside, but also now more than ever, a leader from the next generation to reach and lead the new generation of Americans. Thomas Jefferson, he was 33 years old when he wrote that Declaration of Independence in 1776. I like your shirt there, sir. Jefferson was 33. Is that about your age?
48.
Oh, God, you look good. Okay, I appreciate that. And by the way, Thomas Jefferson, he invented the swivel chair while he was at it. Little known fact. Benjamin Franklin, the co-signers, one of the co-signers of the Declaration of Independence, of course, he invented the Franklin stove, named after him. He invented a remedy to the common cold, the bifocal spectacles, an early prototype of the lightning rod on the top of your house. Robert Livingston, he was an ambassador to France. In his spare time, invented one of the key components of the steamboat. Go straight down the list. I mean, there was something in the water back then in 1776. That inner animal spirit.
Something in the water now.
Well, something else in the water. We got to bring back that 1776 spirit. And I think that we have this inner animal spirit in our country. It has been domesticated. It has been tamed. It has been whipped into submission by this new culture that penalizes excellence and celebrates victimhood. Our culture of excellence, it has leapt oceans to lift up places like China, while their culture of Maoist victimhood has come all the way back here to hold us down. When we rallied behind the cry to make America great again, we didn't just hunger for a single man. We hungered for that unapologetic pursuit of excellence, for that 1776 spirit. And I think it is going to take a leader whose best days in life are still yet ahead. And I don't take that for granted, but I hope they are for our family. A leader whose best days in life are still yet ahead, to see a country whose best days are still ahead of itself. And that's how I hope to lead this country. Right there, sir.
5 more minutes.
Okay, thank you, Mike.
Hi, my name is Jordan, and I want to know, who do we owe the national debt to? Where is it owed to? Is it the World Economic Forum and Great Reset people? Because I think we should have a reset where we wipe it out, and we're not going to pay it.
Well, let me just, I get where you're coming from. What's your name, man?
Jordan.
Jordan. So let me tell you how I'm going to deal with our national debt. Let me just answer your question first. Somebody should do this with the other, you should go to the other presidential candidates and see if they can get answers. There's actually very clear answers. It's like China, Japan, certain other countries, we go straight down the list. I don't think most people understand how our national debt actually works. And it's not going to say people, because most politicians have no idea. Even who are running for president have no idea how it works. The way it works is, it's okay for us to have some amount of national debt. Right? I'm not one of these purists to say we don't need national debt. If you think about it economically, the dollar, the reserve currency of the world, that's a good thing. One of the ways we use that to our advantage is if a terrorist in another country, we need to freeze their assets, we can do that because we have control of the financial system. Our borrowing costs are actually lower because the dollar is the reserve currency, because people around the world would rather have dollars. So just speaking as a businessman, it's okay to have a small, reasonable amount of national debt that gives us some flexibility if there's investment opportunity or otherwise to go after it. But what's happened right now is our national debt's way out of control. Where in about 5 years, the interest payments on our national debt are going to become the largest line item in our federal budget. And if we get there, then we're done. Because then we're in quicksand. We don't have a country left.
Well, who do we pay it to?
So we're paying it to people who hold it. Many of us in this room probably hold the national debt in our own bank account. The bonds. That's exactly what a treasury bond is.
Okay.
Right? And so there's literally, is 8 billion people in the world, but there's billions of people and countries and companies, et cetera, that hold our national debt. They're just what a treasury bond is. And the US government's issuing that to borrow that money. That's how it works. Problem is it's gotten way too big, it's gotten way out of control, and it's gonna cripple our country in your generation. Unless, you got about $200,000 of that national debt on your shoulders per person, unless we actually do something about it. Here's how I'm gonna do something about it, very practical.
Now.
We're gonna get the oil and natural gas out from underneath our ground and sell it. That automatically buys down about $8 trillion of our national debt right there.
Isn't that what the rest of the world's doing?
Well, that's what we should be doing. The next thing we're going to do is stay out of the foreign wars in places like Iraq and Afghanistan. People your age, when I was your age, my peers, by the tens of thousands, we sent them to go die in places like Iraq and Afghanistan. By the way, Iraq is a more broken country than when we showed up. Afghanistan has got the Taliban still in charge 20 years later, for God's sake. $7 trillion of our national debt went to those two wars. And then you cut 75% of the federal bureaucrats. Now we've got our national debt problem under control. Now with China, I do think that we need to hold them accountable for unleashing hell on the world with that COVID-19 pandemic. And so with China, I will use every financial lever we have available, and they're the second largest holder of our bonds, is the Chinese government. We will use every financial lever available to hold them accountable for that COVID-19 pandemic, up to and including our national debt if necessary, though I don't think it's going to come to that. And the only reason not to wipe it out is then we'll never be able to borrow money again. So we should do it the way of just get our oil and gas out of the ground, sell it, buy it down, get it under control, avoid the foreign wars, and slash and burn much of the federal bureaucracy. That's the right way to do this. It's going to take a CEO in the White House to get that done. For me, that's second nature. We'll have that under control, I think, by the end of my first year in office, to be on a trajectory to have this national debt problem set straight. So we'll give you the final word.
I want to see an audit of the black budget. A lot of times I hear about that they're budgeting money under something that we might not.
Of course
see,
it
but
is.
it's
It's totally
I
non-transparent.
want to see where that money is and what the truth, there's two books. There's the public one.
It's truth.
and the black.
So one thing I'm restoring in this government.
Why isn't everything transparent?
It should be. It absolutely should be.
Why isn't everything transparent?
Well, our government has lied to us systematically. That's the answer for why. And so, one thing I can promise you as your next
You
president,
gotta ask the right
we will
question.
tell you the truth again in this country. Our government's lied to us, everything about the Trump-Russia collusion hoax that never was, to the Hunter Biden laptop story on the eve of the last election, to the origin of COVID-19, which came from a lab in Wuhan, to the truth of what really happened on January 6th, which I believe is still being hidden from us, to how our money's being spent in Ukraine, to how our money is being spent at home, to what's really gone on with the creation of a national debt with a shadow budget that has been hidden from public view. We the people deserve a government that tells the people the truth again. We the people, we can handle the truth. We demanded the truth. We deserve the truth. That's what the American Revolution was fought for, is a government that is for the people, of the people, by the people. That's my job to deliver you as your next president. And look, I know you have an important decision to make on January 15th. I'm asking you to do the right thing for our country. I'm in this to take our America First movement to the next level. And for those of you in this room who maybe, if I weren't in this race, I would be too, considering supporting someone like Donald Trump, I want to be honest with you. He's a great president. I respect him. I've respected him more than anybody else in this race. What they're doing to him is wrong, and I've stood against it more than everybody else. But if you think they're gonna let this man get anywhere near that White House again, I'm gonna ask you to open your eyes. They're selling us the rope today that they will use to hang us tomorrow. We cannot fall into that trap. They want this to be a two-horse race between Trump and a puppet that they can control, eliminate Trump and trot their puppet into the White House. Don't fall for that trap. He got this fight started and we love him for it, but it is our job, our duty to finish it. America First did not start in 2016, it started in 1776. And we owe it to this country and our founding fathers to make sure we have another 250 years and then some still left. You got the future of America First standing right here, and I am asking you to do the right thing for our country on January 15th. Take 30 minutes of your time to save this country and tell 10 people in this community what we talked about right here, including what I just told you right now, to see the truth. We don't want to be 12 months from now looking back and saying, I didn't see that coming, or are you going to say, how didn't we see that coming? We have to think independently and skate to where the puck is going. And so I'm in this to make sure our America First agenda survives another 250 years and more to come. And if we do, then we don't have to be this nation in decline anymore. We don't have to be ancient Rome. If George Washington were in this room today, you know what he would tell us? I think he would say that our nation still is a little young, actually. Going through our version of our adolescence. Figuring out who we're going to be when we grow up. That you do have another 250 years and then some still left in you. But you're going to have to step up and seize it just like we did in 1776. This is our 1776 moment. And so if you all do your part in about 9 days, I promise you, my family and I, we will do ours to make sure we'll look our kids in the eye and mean it when we tell them that you still get ahead in this country with your own hard work, your own commitment, your own dedication, and that you know what, you are still free to speak your minds at every step of the way. That is the American dream. That is what we are running to. And with your help,
That was the last question.
that is what we are going to revive to save this great nation. Thank you for coming today, guys. God bless you and your families, and may God bless our United States of America.
Amen.
If you guys want to line up on the right and maybe get a photo with Vivek, and then we have caucus cards. Please do not forget to fill these out for us before you leave.